Hello and welcome to another episode of the Menswear Style Podcast with me, your host, Pete Brooker. In this episode, I sit down with the founder of William Wood Watches, Jonny Garrett. Jonny launched the brand on Kickstarter back in January 2018 and managed to raise £28,000 with the help of just 80 backers. Wow, that's amazing. You can find all the details of that on Kickstarter, by the way, because every campaign, win or lose, gets put out to pasture on Kickstarter. So just type in William Wood Watches and check out the brand success story. I had a great chat with Jonny. He spoke openly and enthusiastically about the brand, which was inspired by his granddad, who served in the British Fire Service for 25 years. I'll let Jonny tell you all about the brand, as he'll do it more eloquently than I. But in the meantime, I want to tell you about Menswear Style. You can visit the site www.menswearstyle.co.uk. There is an infinite amount of content over on the site, including a free ebook on the ABC of men's fashion written by our editor-in-chief. It's bite-sized, it's digestible, you can dip in and out whenever your mood suits, pardon the pun. That's free. There are constant giveaways and you can learn a thing or two on the way, like focused editorials on style icons, get up to speed on latest trends. Just don't miss a thing. That's menswearstyle.co.uk. It's Menswear Style on the social, and if you want to get in touch with a collaboration idea or maybe to be a guest on the show, then email info@menswearstyle.co.uk. Okay, here is that interview with Jonny Garrett, founder of William Wood Watches. It's my great pleasure to welcome Jonny Garrett, founder of William Wood Watches, to the podcast. How are you doing today, Jonny?
I am very good, Peter. Thank you for having me on.
No, it's a pleasure to have you on. Jonny, I'm so glad I didn't screw up the name straight from the bat. It's either going to be William or Jonny Wood, or I actually know a Jonny Wood, so I was thinking, I wrote it down, don't say Jonny Wood.
There you go. Does he make watches? We might have a connection there. I don't know.
Yeah, motorbikes. But yeah, maybe... Yeah. Maybe one of
That's the funny thing as well, though, Peter, because everybody thinks I make wooden watches, but that's something else. The amount of people who think I actually do wooden watches, but it was actually the surname of my grandfather. So we'll talk about that.
Yeah, well, let's get into that, because you've started a watch brand. It looks fantastic. So William Wood Watches is where people go online to check the website out. So just, Jonny, for the uninitiated like me, please give us a little back spiel as to how it all started for you.
Sure, okay. So for me, I've always been very entrepreneurial. I've always really been into my watches. But I always knew if I was ever going to take that step and that leap into running my own business, it would have to be something that would get me out of bed every morning. Now, watches is a real passion of mine, but really somebody who was a critical role model in my life was my grandfather, and he was called William Wood. So he served in the British Fire Service, actually up in Newcastle and Gateshead for 25 years. He retired in 1982, and he served on the Blue Watch up there. But through actually running William Wood Watches, I've been able to meet a lot of his old colleagues and cronies that he worked with. And really, they said that he was a sort of natural-born leader, charismatic guy, and really quite chivalrous. And as my grandfather, that's exactly how I viewed him as well. So I had an idea really back in December 2016 to set up a watch brand which was dedicated to him, firefighters and rescue service workers internationally. But really what's a very, very special and unique point of difference about us is the fact that we actually use original British firefighting materials, and we upcycle them, Peter, and we put them inside of our watches, which is really quite cool.
So I was going to ask you about that. So there is upcycling going on, which is fantastic in its own self, but the helmets that you use to upcycle, they look like they're from the 1920s, from traditional old firefighters' helmets. I mean, how do you manage to get hold of those, and how do you make it cost effective? Because I imagine these things, being nearly 100 years old, must be quite expensive just to burn down to get the coin to put it into the watch. So tell us a little bit about that, please.
You're probably thinking that I'm one of these really specialist guys who just have helmets all around my flat. And I honestly, if you go to my flat, I just have firefighting equipment everywhere. It's mental. But yeah, so there's antique dealers who actually sell the original London Fire Brigade Merryweather helmets, and they are from the 20s. So I basically buy them in. One helmet can do about 500 coins anyway.
Okay.
So you can melt it down, because what we do is we take the majority of the brass and we place that in with other brass to be able to make the coins. So the element of the coin which has the helmet in, which we dip test, is about 87.5% roughly. And the extra 12.5% allows us obviously to get more coins out of what we have.
Great.
So we take our helmets into Hatton Gardens. There's a family-run business there who have been there for 40 years, and they are a precious metals expert. And it's a really, really cool process, but effectively they cut the helmet up, which is quite devastating to watch actually, because the helmets are absolutely beautiful. Do you know what is going to be funny? I can actually show you a helmet here, because I was just saying earlier that I met somebody in Notting Hill.
Oh wow, look at that.
Yeah, so that's what one of the helmets.
This is going to be really confusing for the podcast people with Jonny saying he's showing me his helmet, but that's fine. It'll make much more sense on the. He is in a public space. You can probably hear him there.
Exactly.
So
yeah, exactly. It's not public exposure by any means. Yeah.
But that looks that's fantastic. But and that also becomes the logo of the brand, right? So.
Yeah, absolutely. So. The logo for William Wood watches is the side profile of a London Fire Brigade Merryweather helmet. And there's actually quite an interesting story behind that, because I could have chosen any logo in the world for my business. And I had an advert. It was an editorial, a double-page spread in a firefighter magazine. And one of my grandfather's old colleagues who used to work with him on the Blue Watch reached out to me and said, "Jonny, next time you're up in Newcastle, you have to meet me for a beer." I met up with him, and he actually handed to me a gift which my grandfather gave to him on his final day of 25 years in the service. And it was actually a green tie, and green means a lot because that's the colour of my packaging. And on the tie is the side profile of a 1920s British brass firefighter's helmet.
Wow.
And that was the gift that he gave to his old colleague, who is now in my hands.
That is fantastic.
Which is quite incredible. Because my grandfather unfortunately passed away 10 years ago.
Sure. So, I mean, it's what I found going through the story and the history on your website was that it has a real personal journey, both your grandfathers and now in turn you, which is almost like the correlation a lot of people who are into watches have with their watches as well. They have that, maybe the fathers passed it down, it's a generational thing. So how much of this and this business has affected your personal journey? So your primary focus now, I guess, is the head of William Wood Watches.
Yeah.
And was there anything before that? So, I mean, the business is like 2 to 3 years old now. What was it before, switching over to this full time?
Yeah. So to answer your question, I think it's not just driven my career, but it's driven my life really as well. I mean, as you can appreciate, running a business, it's really all hands on deck. And what I've learned over time, especially being close to the fire service, is people have such strong, quite traditional values, and I think that's carried into how I run the business as well. Prior to running this business, I had a business which was actually public speaking, because I used to like doing a lot of public speaking, and it's actually helped me promote my business and really promote what I love and what I want to do. But yeah, it's a really, really valid question, because firefighting is a generational thing. The amount of people who actually were inspired to get into rescue services because of their grandfather, and actually it's normally grandparents or because of their parents, is quite incredible. Now, I haven't become a firefighter, but it certainly shaped my career and my business, just really by seeing how much of an incredible guy my grandfather was.
Yeah. And so I'm curious, and I think a lot of the listeners will be, especially the ones that are maybe thinking about following in your footsteps, Jonny, to how to bring something like this from concept to market. So I know the Chivalrous collection is already out, the ones with the helmets and the coins on the back, and then up and coming, the release in December will be the Valiant collection. So
that's right. Yeah.
That will be raised on Kickstarter. So I'm throwing about 100 questions at you. So, how did you get the first collection off the ground? Was that with a Kickstarter campaign too?
Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, that journey, honestly, was insane, because you are literally going from an idea which you've sketched out to how on earth do I bring this to life with no experiences in watches or watchmaking or horology or whatever. So really, for me, I thought of the idea in December 2016. It's probably quite good to just talk you through chronologically what happened.
Yeah.
And then on the 1st of January, that was when I set up my Instagram account, William with Watches. And really, at that moment, I was just sharing pictures of other brands and really elements of watches that I really liked, but then sort of directing people in the route of where I wanted to take my debut Chivalrous collection. And I think what was really, really key at that stage was collating a mailing list of very, very hungry, interested people. Because really what you're trying to do is you're trying to get to the stage where you have a prototype that you can then launch on a crowdfunding platform. Well, that was my route. And you can click send on an email to hopefully thousands of people and drive a hungry and captive audience to your watch page. So 1st of January, social media went live. In March, I took my designs. I found the designer through a website called People Per Hour. And that was quite funny because originally I'm from Newcastle, now living in London. I found a watch designer who was living in London, previously lived in Newcastle, and he actually originally worked for Lego Watches.
Wow, okay.
And which I hadn't heard of, because what's really cool about that, he was telling me, is obviously a child can learn how to tell the time, but in quite a creative and fun way. So, because you're physically building the watch.
Yeah,
so he had experience designing watches. Obviously, it was watches made from bricks.
Yeah.
But he did a hell of a job with my collection, and he had experience actually producing watches too, because he ran their production facility. So we flew out to Baselworld in Switzerland to the watch and jewelry trade show. That was in March 2017, and that's crazy because you just fly into this really, really sleepy town in Switzerland, which is just tiny, and then March every year it just goes wild with watch enthusiasts. So we went there and we had really 6 or 7 hours to sort of fly in and fly out and try and get some suppliers on board. All we had was our watch sketches. And really, you're going in there trying to make out that you are sort of bigger than you are because you don't have any collection and you've got no experience. So we had lots of different meetings. It was a bit like a hot, I'd say a speed dating session. And we actually ended up securing some pretty world-renowned suppliers and manufacturers of watches, straps, and presentation boxes. And from then on, it was game on.
Right.
So from there, it was all about then building up the prototypes. So sampling's going back and forth to my factory. And then the 1st of August, all of that hard work was coming up to that one date where it's funny because it's like if you've ever sent an email out on MailChimp to a big mailing list.
I have, yeah.
And it's got that chimp who's just like, his fingers shaking and he's sweating. Yeah. Like literally, that was me when I was launching on Kickstarter. So I pressed it. And I needed to raise £25,000 to basically order my first 500 watches. And I ended up raising £27,000 in less than 7 days.
Wow.
Which was like fireworks going off in my mind because it had really brought the original idea to life. And I was making and doing what I ultimately set out to do. And the cool thing about crowdfunding is I still own 100% of the business. People are pre-ordering my product for a very small discount, which I pass on to them. And the reason they're doing it is, one, they get a discount from the watch, but two, they are getting a unique watch that nobody else in the world has. They're getting very close to an entrepreneurial story. And it's a very nice way, really, to be able to support a small brand rather than walking into like a Harrods or a Selfridges and buying a Rolex or an IWC. And every month I would send them updates of their specific watch in production right through to delivery on their doorstep.
Yeah, well, that's such a great story. But also such an inspiration for people that don't have the capabilities or the skill sets to do everything, but then can start on a concept or an idea, even if it's a German of an idea, and just get out there rather than sit behind the computer all day just emailing people hoping that they'll look at a value proposition. Literally go out there, press the flesh, fly out to Baselworld. I've been there myself. I know how much of a beehive of activity that place is. It's fantastic. So yeah, just being amongst the energy and making things happen. So I mean, that's fantastic. And you've got so much emotion attached to the brand that I think that's what really people connect with. And that's what people really like to champion, is the story. So how saturated, well, is it at all? I was going to ask, a lot of watches appear as Kickstarter campaigns. Some of them fall by the wayside, some of them, go on to great things. How did you find the market at the time that you entered it? Was there a lot of people there?
So I'm hearing mixed things about Kickstarter. So I'm at the time that I entered it, there was obviously fewer brands than there are 2 years on, because what I've learned over time is that I got into watches because I like it and I've got a passion for it. But what I've found over time is it is one of the most saturated markets in the world. I mean, as a watch owner, the amount of times that I get hit now with Facebook adverts of other micro brands, it's unbelievable. And there are some incredible businesses out there. But what I've noticed is you have to have a unique point of difference. You have to have a point of difference in such a saturated market, because if you're pushing out quite a generic entry-level watch, it's so hard to progress and create a sustainable long-term business, which hopefully, from my standpoint, I want to be a globally recognized brand one day. So to answer your question, I think it's getting harder, but the barrier to entry is so low, and that's the reason why there's so many people in it.
Yeah.
Kickstarter is enabling people to be able to fund really their first mass production order. The other thing you'll find is, as the business grows in time, it's difficult, because Kickstarter is great, and I can point people in the direction of my Kickstarter page and say, we've just raised £27,000. I've got the Valiant collection coming out on the 1st of December, which is our automatic diving watch. I've just done a soft launch to my existing 500 customers, and I've already raised £25,000 from that.
Wow.
And I haven't even gone live until the 1st of December. But what you'll find is, when you're trying to deal with bigger outlets, PR and publications, they like to, it's quite hard associating yourself with Kickstarter, because with it, they therefore think that you're quite a small brand. And I was really toying with the idea of, do I do a pre-launch on my own website, or do I go the Kickstarter route again? And I decided with Kickstarter because I think it's such a lovely public display of, this is how successful we've been, guys. And a Kickstarter page can never be taken down. So good or bad, fail or succeed, it's on there forever.
Yeah. So that's really interesting. And now I guess you're at a point where you've already done some soft marketing for the Valiant brand. Can we talk about that? So we have
Sure.
two different kind of movements going on, if I remember.
Yeah.
So you have the Swiss and the Japanese. So can you just talk through some of the optionality that people will be buying when they invest in the Valiant?
Sure. Yeah. So the Valiant watch, I mean, I just ooze with passion when I talk about it, because the Valiant watch is honestly like nothing I've ever seen on the watch market. And you'll probably hear this from watch enthusiasts or watch owners all the time. But effectively, we've created an automatic diving watch, which has sort of small tips of, I would say, the helmet or the hat to the fire service, but is also a lovely watch for somebody who is just a real watch enthusiast or somebody who likes watches. We've kept all of the really cool upcycling elements, and we've actually gone one step further. And it's really interesting, because I have a bag of goodies. I just wanted to ask Peter, can the viewers see us?
They can't. This will just be for the podcast, but it'd be interesting to see it so that I can tell my mates.
Sure. yeah, absolutely. Because I've just had a meeting in Notting Hill, and I've literally got a duffel bag where I just carry everything William Wood related. So I guess the first thing which is really cool and something unique that I've never seen before is we've actually created watch straps made from original Angus Duraline fire hose. Okay.
Oh,
so
wow, that's
we have got these. I've got rows and rows of fire hose in my flat, whereby they have given over 10 years worth of service to the UK fire and rescue community. It took us 4 months of testing just to be able to get this rubber to a position where it's amenable enough to use as a watch strap.
Yeah.
Because it is designed to be chucked into severe house fires. So when you're trying to use it in a creative way, it's really quite difficult. So I've got a big roll of yellow fire hose rubber here, which I've actually put down, okay? And the cool thing is it's got all of the original imprints on it as well. So depending upon which strap you choose, you're going to get a completely different, unique part of fire hose rubber on your diving style strap. And this is so cool. This is a red version of one of the straps which we've actually finished.
Wow, that is just fantastic.
Finish. I mean, as I say, it took us months to get us to this to this level. And when you smell it, it stinks of smokiness, because at the end of the day, that's done 10 years of service, and you can still smell the smokiness in the rubber from people who have gone into a burning building and actually been rescuing people and saving lives.
That's fantastic. And plus, this is going to be really handy for someone like me that needs to disguise the smell of cigar smoke from the missus. So when I go out walking the dog and she comes back, hey, did you just put out a Tipperillo back there? I was like, no way. Have a smell of the watch.
I've got a William Wood watch.
Exactly.
So that's just one element. What we've also done is, again, we've taken the original 1920s British class firefighter's helmet. We've gone to our same suppliers in Hatton Gardens, and we've created crown inserts, which again are engraved with our unique firefighter helmet logo. And that crown insert is basically take a 3D wax mold, which we print. We then basically solder different elements of the wax into a tree. This tree is then placed and covered with paste and put into a kiln oven. It comes out and it's boiling hot, and we let it cool off. And then when you chisel the paste away, you actually have a solid formation that you can pour the residual value of the brass into. And then when you take the branches off, you actually have beautifully detailed brass crown inserts. So obviously the component which allows you to set the time, which we place into the crown. And that's made, again, from an original British firefighter's helmet. So
wow.
The lovely thing is you can say that you are wearing a real piece of British firefighting history, not just in the watch, but in the straps themselves.
That's fantastic. Well, Jonny, I just wish people could actually see what you were showing me there. But for the people that are on listening to this on the podcast, we'll do a write-up article. The show notes will be over on menswearstyle.co.uk. Obviously, we can head over to your site as well, williamwoodwatches.com, where all of the watches will be there on the boutique. It's great to hear you talk about it with so much enthusiasm, because it's such an original story.
Thank you. You also talked about the movements.
Yeah, so please, I was just going to, if you could just recap of the movements, please.
Absolutely. So there's two different types of movements which we offer, because what we wanted to do with this range is we wanted to put the power into the customer's hands. We've created a generic size, a universal size case, which allows you to effectively have either a Japanese NH35 Seiko movement, which is a beautiful movement. It's got 24 jewel bearings, very, very good accuracy, or a Swiss ETA 2824 movement, which has 25 jewel bearings. But the great thing is the watch case is universal to be able to fit both of these two movements. The only difference that you'll see is obviously in the exhibition case back, one has a stainless steel Seiko rotor on the back, and it also has the firefighter's helmet engraved on it, and the other is a beautiful gold colour Swiss ETA 2824 movement. And the date window, the numerical numbers on the date windows just look slightly different on each.
Right.
But it's quite cool that we've been able to put that in the power of the customer's hands.
Yeah, exactly. So it's more optionality, and they can get it tailored pretty much how they want it as well. So yeah, fantastic. I mean, like I say, it's just such an eye-opener. I think the only time I've ever seen something similar, and it's not even within watches, is by a brand called Freitag, who I think they're a Swiss brand, who make tarpaulin trucks. They get the tarpaulin off the trucks and then put those into kind of carrier bags and sort of like rucksacks and passenger bags. But you also have like the seat belts that they use in the trucks as the fasteners for the bags. And I thought actually that it's something like that, with like the whole idea of upcycling and sustainability, but also knowing that these guys were in a flat and they had reams and rolls of tarpaulin that were just completely covering their bedsit, and it has this kind of roots to it has that sort of the same sort of vibe, which I can imagine you can relate to. So, sure. Jonny, once the Valiant collection is out, I'm just kind of thinking further down the road for you, if you've even thought about this, if the brand kicks off as big as you hope it can be and as it should be, do you want to keep absolute control of this brand, or is the idea to say, right, that's the project, now I can let that go, I can give away shares, etc.? How do you imagine yourself with William Wood Watches in 5 years?
So it's really interesting that you've said that, and the whole reason that I'm in Notting Hill today is I've just met the founder of Charles Stewart, Nick Wheeler, the shirt maker. And the reason that I met him is because he's grown a shirt business over the last 33 years, which is now turning over roughly £180 million a year and £18 million a year of profit. So he is doing phenomenally well. And he said, all you have to do is, if you want to go down this route, it's hard, it's long term, you're building a sustainable business, but you just have to do something a little bit better every day. So you really are in it for the long haul. And what I'm trying to establish here is genuinely my long-term life career. I don't want to take on investment. I don't want to give any equity away in the business. I want to just build a sustainable brand which is going to be here for decades to come. And aspirationally, we would like to start out by focusing on the fire service, but obviously there is only so far that you can go. So when we get to the stage where we have a sufficient solid customer base, I would like to keep my grandfather's story at the absolute integral part of the business, keep the integrity running there, but then move into different rescue services, whether it be military, RNLI lifeboats, police, ambulance, etc., with the fact that my grandfather was a rescue service hero at the core of the story.
Yeah, and that makes total sense to me, because it sounds like there's, at the heart of it, a moral compass with the brand. And if your grandfather's face, or if he's at the pillar of this brand, then you can't really go too far wrong, because he's always there reminding you of what should be right and what should be wrong, by the sound of it.
Yeah, all I've got to do, as he says, is look at the name on the dial, and it really gives a wake-up call to you. Yeah. So,
I mean, I did think maybe the name of your next collection, though, could be something like the Squared Pectoral, because I saw the YouTube video of the firefighter Lee Phillips coming, like, bounding out of bed, like Jesus H Christ, I need to do some press ups, and then down the gym he goes. You know, he's not wearing a top. He's like the Iggy Pop of firemen. You know, he didn't have a shirt on for like the whole 50 seconds of the video. My God! But I don't blame him.
Do you know what? You hit such a valid point. Okay. And I almost fell in this trap early on in William Wood. It is so easy to just take on a brand ambassador who has nothing to do with your business. In my early days, I was talking to people who were on reality programs like Made in Chelsea, and thank God I never took people on like that as brand ambassadors, because really, who's my perfect brand ambassador? It's Lee Phillips, London Fire Brigade firefighter, Men's Health front cover model, and literally UK champion of CrossFit. This man is literally a bullseye and perfect to be promoting my brand. And I think it's funny when you see some product brands out there where you just think, what is that person doing? I mean, they have no association or value connection to this brand at all. And Lee is just perfect for William Wood watches.
Yeah, I don't imagine he was too long in the audition room.
Exactly.
I bet that was a rough.
So funny. He's 6'2", 110 kg. He's like 6% body fat. I mean, he made me just think, I don't even want to leave the house anymore.
yeah, no, it's funny. We'll link the YouTube video in the show notes. People should run over and see that. Not my girlfriend, though. I'm having her nowhere near that. Okay, well, listen, Jonny, thanks so much for stepping on the podcast. WilliamWoodWatches.com is the place you'll go. Is there a link to the Kickstarter on your website?
Yeah, so what I'll be doing is on the 1st of December, I will be posting the link to the new Kickstarter page on my website. If you just type in William Wood Watches into Google, the first two results are my website and the previous Kickstarter page where you can see the Chivalrous collection. If anybody has any questions, I mean, we have a library on there and a blog you can visit. And you can also see our vision. We have a big vision, which is to take over a big closed British fire station. We want to convert that into our head office and concept store. We want to get a salvaged vintage fire truck, emboss it and brand it with all of our logos and drive the length and breadth of the UK promoting the brand. So there's a big vision, but we need the support of your listeners and everybody who's a watch enthusiast really to get as much attention as possible on the brand.
Fantastic. Well, listen, thanks again for telling us your story, Jonny. It's been fascinating, and best of luck with the campaigns.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, take care. Well, there you have it. Jonny Garrett from William Wood Watches. Thank you so much for coming onto the show, Jonny. I hope there was something in that for you if you're looking to do a startup company, if you're looking for help on Kickstarter, being an entrepreneur, taking a couple of nuggets from what Jonny was dishing out there, having a very original concept, having some emotion attached to the brand always helps. That's it from me. So once again, the website, www.menswearstyle.co.uk. We'll be back, I'm sure, but until next time, remember, it's only fashion, people, and you're never fully dressed without a smile.